Right, there's a sense in which all creatures that are part of life on Earth are immortal. As a part of any plant, a part of any animal that lives on after its death. And that's one way of defining a gene. A gene is that part of a living organism that doesn't die when the animal dies. And you don't actually have to have sex to be immortal, because your genes, or the animal's genes, live on through its relatives as well as through the offspring. But the interesting point from our standpoint as anthropologists is that we human beings participate in two levels of immortality. So we have cultural immortality, and you could think of Shakespeare or Jesus or big figures that have left a mark, and these ideas live on. But of course in real life, everything that we say and do and put into our culture in some ways lives on. I don't know exactly who my great-great-great-grandmother was and what her jokes were and what her sense of humour was and all those things, but there's no doubt that she contributed to the culture that's made me the person I am. So we've got those two levels of immortality. And the argument I think that we're making is that, in a way strangely, the intersection between those two levels of immortality, if we're interested in that and try to work out how it came that in our case life sort of skipped upper level and acquired this new level of immortality, you can't really understand that without touching on menstruation. Just before we started here, I was down getting a drink, and the question was being posed, Chris, what's the subject tonight? And everyone down there was all drinking. I just sort of said, well, I felt a bit embarrassed. I'm not sure I'm supposed to say what the subject is. So I kind of said, it's sort of unmentionable. And luckily the bartender said, well, what is it then? And I said, well, it's menstruation. And she said, well, relax. You know, without menstruation, none of us would be here. You know? She said that, yeah. And so I just said, well, I don't really need to give a lecture. That's it in a nutshell. But of course, if we're anthropologists, we're interested in the details. And I'm not a specialist in menstruation. I mean, why does menstruation matter? I'm a man. I can't explain why it matters at all. So this is human origins why it matters. And the fact is, of course, as I'm sure you know, that you can say men perhaps shouldn't pry into these issues and shouldn't get too involved in sort of women's secrets and so on. And I have heard that argument. But of course, academics, mostly male, have been all too happy to carry on discussing human origins as if everyone was male. So you have man the toolmaker, man the hunter, man the thinker, man the this, man the other. And they're quite happy about doing that. And on the other hand, if you don't do that, and you start saying, actually, females, we come in two kinds as human beings, and only one of which gets pregnant. And then, of course, you get these days, particularly perhaps from the left and certain strands of feminism, a different argument, which is actually everyone should be treated equal. You shouldn't treat women as different, and we need to, snap out of this essentialism, this idea that we've got to treat each sex as if they were kind of separate species almost. But of course, we have to treat men as different because that is the fact. Men don't get pregnant, and the obvious, correlate of that is that a woman who's had a baby, newborn baby, she can't very well just abandon it immediately. That baby needs her. Maybe it needs its daddy as well, but you can imagine, of course it happens all too often, you can get pregnant by somebody who then shoots off and tries to get somebody else pregnant. And that's a huge, huge issue. So, when I was talking about immortality, I was saying that part of an animal lives on through its genes. And the definition of a gene is that it's a replicator. So everything around us, all forms of life on Earth, the reason they're around is because their ancestors were good at getting their genes into the future. I don't think that's reactionary to say that. I have heard all kinds of people on the left saying that's selfish gene theory, that is sociobiology, that's deeply sexist, deeply racist and deeply reactionary. Of course, it's true that you can be political about this stuff, and there was a thing called sociobiology, and it was certain people using selfish gene theory to advance very strangely reactionary arguments, but the idea that genes are replicators, and a gene that doesn't replicate itself is very rapidly an X gene, that's the definition of a gene, and we shouldn't be scared of it. It's just the way things are, and if we don't understand that, really we can't understand the evolution of life on Earth, and we certainly can't understand what it means to be human. And it was only when selfish gene theory became prevalent, when there was what we could maybe call a revolution in the life sciences, the selfish gene revolution in the life sciences, that we understand how life works. And before that, you had a thing called group selection, and the idea was that animals have sex, they do all the different things they do for the good of the group. So you have competition, but the idea was that the competition is between groups, which then turned into races. And so you had the idea, for example, that warfare is possibly quite good because it's good for the race. And sex was explained in those terms as if animals that don't have sex, they won't reproduce, the group. And so animals do things for the good of the group. And that had all kinds of deeply reactionary consequences, all of which were exploded by precisely the selfish gene revolution in the life sciences. So the idea is now that animals have sex not for the good of the group, but sex is about getting your genes into the future. It's not the only way of getting your genes into the future, but it's one of the ways. And it's only when that was understood that we understood what an absolutely crucial fact. So again, before the selfish gene revolution of the life sciences, females were treated as kind of add-ons. You have a group. It's obvious that many animals, certainly primates, usually the males are dominant and the females are there to produce the babies, but they're not active agents in their own right. Selfish gene theory exploded that because as soon as you think in terms of genes, it becomes immediately obvious that the way the female gets her genes into the future are likely to clash with the way the male gets his genes into the future. It's very simple. It's about cells, sex cells, gametes. An egg is not the same as a sperm. So in the human case, an egg is 80,000 times bigger than a sperm. So eggs take a while to get ready. You're born with a limited number of them. They're costly. It means that the female is periodic because you have to be got ready to be fertilized at a certain time, and after that, a new egg is needed. And then in turn has to be get ready. Sperm are different. The testicles produce millions of them. They cost nothing, pretty much. There's a continuous supply of them. And the crucial thing here now is that when a female has got some sperm and fertilized that egg, in biological terms, strictly biological terms, she doesn't need any more sperm. One tiny sperm is enough to get you 100 and, completely and utterly pregnant. Whereas when you think about it from the male standpoint, just in terms of getting your genes into the future, getting as many genes into the future as possible, when a male's fertilised a female and you ask the question, right, could he make use of some more eggs from somebody else? I mean, isn't the answer obvious? Yes, you can. You can get somebody else pregnant and somebody else pregnant. There's no limit to the number of offspring a male can have. There's definitely a limit to the number of offspring a female can have. Why is that important? It's because it suddenly revealed that anyone looking at human origins in particular has to take account of female strategies. They're not a reflection of male strategies. They're often in conflict with male strategies. For example, and my teacher in many ways of all this was Robin Dunbar at UCL. And he was explaining that if you've got a group of baboons, some male and some female, once the females are pregnant, they'll be interested in making sure they can feed their offspring. And where they're going to move is going to be dependent on where the resources are. The males may be looking for other fertile females to get pregnant, so you can see there's like a conflict. The males may want to go that way, they're interested in sex, the females want to go this way, they're interested in food. And that dynamism, the conflict between the two strategies ends up kind of constructing the structure of the group. I won't go into all the details now, but if you don't understand that basic fact that females are independent agents with their own strategies and goals, then nothing can really be understood. Right, okay, that's just sort of preliminary. Menstruation. I mean, first of all, just a fact, which is go to any hunter-gatherer group and menstruation just is an enormously important fact of life. It's maybe a taboo, but menstrual blood is regarded as kind of taboo, all kinds of precautions, but it's also potent in a way that other tabooed substances are. Menstruation is powerful, massively powerful. And of course some of you will have heard Jerome Lewis talk about the Bengeli, who argue woman's biggest husband is the moon. The moon's blood is a source of enormous potency. Once a month, when a woman's cycling, she's visited by the moon. That gives her privileged access to a special, powerful knowledge, and out of that experience becomes, quite a long story, becomes what's called a Keeler. So, as Jerome was explaining, a Keeler is a concept which is quite difficult to get hold of. You need to live with a Bengeli and pygmies in Central Africa, in the Congo forest. You need to live with them quite a while, as Jerome did. So I'm trying to work out what on earth a Keeler means, but it's a concept which links women's blood with the blood of game animals. And it's perhaps the central moral concept of the Bengeli. It defines what good living is all about, what should be done and what shouldn't be done. Not in a sort of top-down moralistic way, but in a way which kind of makes sense through play, through experience, and gradually acquire knowledge of what a Keeler is all about. And perhaps I'll just read this out. This is a quote from Jerome's article in the JRAI, the Journal of the Royal Anthropological Institute. A Keeler, blood, bodies, and egalitarian societies, because Jerome's argument is that this concept of a Keeler helps ensure egalitarianism, helps ensure the sharing out of provisions, helps ensure ecological management in many ways, prevents particular areas from being hunted out. There's a belief that the Keeler you'll lose your Keeler if you hunt too long in a particular place, if you don't follow the correct procedures in your relationship with your animals. And he has this quotation from Emeka, a 48-year-old Bengeli man, who says, "A Keeler is the name of the medicine combat sent women when women put in the moon." So when a woman menstruates, she puts in the moon, puts the moon into herself. It is all about children. You can't see women's tummies swell up at this time. If that blood stays in the body, it will make the woman ill. She has to get rid of it. She has to do a Keeler. That is how it should be. Women's biggest husband is the moon. If I'm a hunter, I don't sleep around with different women. If I sleep with her, and then her, and then her, and then her, all the animals would know. They would smell my smell and know that hunter has ruined his own hunting. Some will come with great anger. Others, you shoot them and they won't die. You're very surprised. When you shoot at an antelope from close range and it doesn't die, we call this a Keeler. Women's blood is one thing, men killing animals is another. Men's a Keeler is about hunting. The hunter's meat is a Keeler. Animals have a Keeler. The bongo is a huge and dangerous a Keeler. Well, I don't think I've got a picture of the bongo here. Do you want to just say what it looks like?
The bongo is this great, big, beautiful, huge red antelope with beautiful white stripes. It's very beautiful patterned. It's red.
Great. So it just seems to me rather strange that the concept which, and by the way, a Keeler has parallels right across the Central Africa among the hunter-gatherers. But it also has parallels with the Hadza. The Hadza have the concept of airpime. It also has parallels among the Kalahari San, where it's called num. I can't pronounce the word num properly, but Camilla can pronounce it. I've just got to sort of click on it. Sum, right. But in all those cases, the concept links women's blood with the moon, with the blood of game animals, in such a way as to ensure the correct ritual, playful, respectful behaviour that will mean that the relationship between humans and their environment is harmonious, that people live well, that there's always abundance. And the primary meaning of a Keeler, all these other concepts, is menstruation. But of course, our concept of menstruation, when we say the word menstruation, you think of it in the West, we do it in a kind of medicalised way. We think of it as kind of biological stuff, something to do with gynecology and stuff. For hunters and gatherers, that very word will mean, the word they will have will mean what our word, of course, originally meant. Menstruation means literally moon change. But they will think of it in terms of spirit, of energy, power, potency. Our word menstruation as a kind of medicalised concept just isn't around. But it's odd, isn't it, that the concept's so important among African hunter-gatherers, among the people who lived in a continent, Africa, longer than any other people in the world, who survived all that time, from whom we've all come, if the concept which is most important to them, somehow we can't talk about it because menstruation is so heavily involved. I mean, by the way, Jerome, I think, is the first person to have published in the JRAI specifically on that topic. I wrote a book, of course, Menstruation and the Origin of Culture, Blood Raisins, which all of you can look at, by the way. It's free. It's on the internet. It's a Kindle book, ebook. But we do have a big problem. We do have a big problem in trying to get people who are interested in human origins to pay attention to this topic, because of course there's always this other tendency to go down the man the hunter, man the toolmaker, sort of abstract unisex road, and nearly all accounts of human origins, they do exactly that. And there's absolutely no explanation for these concepts which are so different from the ones that we're familiar with in the West. So perhaps I should just say now, Mark was just telling me, this is brilliant. At last, the National Geographic have got a big article in here on the topic that our team have been most focused on, which is, I don't think they even mention the word menstruation, actually, but it's on cosmetics. So I'll come on to it in a moment, but this is the piece of red ochre dating back 75,000 years or so. It's used to, we know what these pieces of ochre, I can show them in a minute when I do the slideshow, with markings on. And here we have a picture of the himba, young women adorning their hair and bodies with this brilliant red ochre. So the evidence that this red stuff, this red cosmetics, used as body paint, used as, if you like, women's war paint, is another way of putting it, to express the solidarity of women, is now widely recognised. It's the ochre record, the fact that when you look to any of the continents, actually, if it's Africa, the point where our species was emerging, 150, 200,000 years ago, we see the signature of that development, what we call the human revolution, is this mass of beautiful, brilliant red ochre. What's going on? It's some brave works, sorry. Then, of course, humans move out of Africa around 60,000 years ago. And when they get to Australia, again, the signature of that arrival of modern Homo sapiens in Australia is a mass of red ochre. When we got to Europe, displacing the Neanderthals, you find in the Auric nation enormous quantities of brilliant blood red ochre. And the same when modern humans arrived in North America, we find that. So wherever our species went, it's like the signature of our arrival anywhere is the ochre. Surely we need some explanation for that. Why is that the case? So ochre it tells you, as an archaeologist, modern humans have arrived with religion, call it religion, I prefer the word magic, I suppose, but anyway, some kind of animistic religion, and with symbolic ritual, presumably language, the sign of it being this ochre. So, shall I say, in rag, we don't exactly have a line on things, but those of us who've been consistently with rag over the years and helped establish rag, we think it's quite important to put everything together, put the big picture of our emergence as a species together. There may be other ways of putting the big picture together, putting together the biology, the population genetics, the hunter-gatherer ethnography, the rock art. There may be other ways of putting the whole thing together, but if they are, tell me what they are, because I don't know of any other ways other than the way we do it here. And when I say put it together, I mean put together in a simplifying, logical form what it means to be human and how we came to be human, including stuff which our own culture might feel slightly uncomfortable with. Okay, I'll just go through the slides. So we're looking at universals of hunter-gatherer societies, and there are many. A gendered division of labour. So it's not that women can't hunt, women could hunt, sometimes they do hunt, but there's a very widespread, particularly in Africa, view that women kind of don't want to hunt. It's not particularly a good idea to shed blood with spears or arrows in the hunt. That's men's job. There's a kind of a categorical structure. It's not that some women who feel a little bit more able-bodied and maybe haven't got nothing covered with kids join the hunting band and others don't. Or it's obviously true that some women would be better hunters physically than some of the men. But all the men are men and do hunt in principle. Obviously you get a bit old, you don't hunt so much and so on, but in principle they're hunters and tell the stories about hunting. Women, as a category, do other stuff. Fact. Some people I know imbued with European conceptions just think, oh, that's very unfortunate, very oppressive. Women don't seem to be allowed to hunt. It needs to be looked at exactly the other way around. Women's strategies are to get somebody else, namely the leisure sex, to do some of the work that otherwise would be left to women who've got enough work to do already with gathering and breastfeeding and being pregnant and so on. Menstrual taboos. All hunter-gatherers have. Taboos isn't quite the right word, but maybe it is the right word. In some ways, probably the very concept of taboo comes from menstrual taboos, but don't think of them as just, mustn't talk about menstruation, hide it. It's not that at all. In hunter-gatherer society, menstruation is very much a powerful signal. Everybody knows when a woman's menstruating. And it's a huge empowerment for the woman involved. Perhaps shall I do this now? I'll say a little bit about this now. This is from a wonderful article which was given to Camilla by one of her students, who was a very a student who wasn't following the course properly and kept on doing his own reading.
He was meant to do a presentation on an article I'd given him, and he came up with this other article. I said, what is this to myself? But it turned out to be the most genius and incredible breakthrough on Bushman ethnography, and it was like 2013, it was recent, hot off the press. And this team, Bradford, Keeney and Hillary, they spent many, many years with the Kalahari Bushmen, studying their stories, their trance dances, their rituals, their kinship and stuff, living with them, and specifically concentrating on the most important ritual for the Kalahari, which was the girls' puberty ritual, known as the Eland Bull dance. So don't think we're just picking on the female version of the ritual because we've got some kind of political agenda, we want to stress the female. No, it's just a fact that for African hunters and gatherers, the female initiation ritual is the most important. Boys do get kind of initiated, they do celebrate their first kill, but even what the boys do is actually modelled on what the girls do. And I'll just read some of this out. The girls' first menstruation, and often the next few menstruation periods as well, opens the door to first creation for all members of the community. They dance naked because this is a sign of being in first creation, a time when people did not wear clothes. The men do not dance as an eland simply in order to attract a spirit eland. They dance as an eland because they feel they are being transformed into the eland people, the form of the original ancestors. They expect the ancestors to return to the here and now of ongoing second creation, because first creation is eternal, bringing past, present and future into simultaneous participation. In this situation, all members of the community can change at any time. The young girl can experience herself as being an old woman. She can also transform gender and become a boy or a man, as well as an animal or hybrid form. I'll leave out some wonderful detail here because we probably haven't got time. But Kuntabu, one of his informants, reported that everyone must bleed in order to enter first creation. He explained that when they bleed like the girl, they have no fear because they too are like her, and the changing makes them as strong with Nun, this potency. So I'm just saying that menstruation is important in that sense. The Kalahari people have this idea of first creation and second creation. First creation was the original time when no one died. Not quite right to say no one died. Death was periodic. People died, but because they were in communication with the moon,
death was always followed by resurrection. So you die temporarily, as the healers do when they go into trance. You die and you come back to life again. And they have these stories about the hair and the moon, but the stories are very different. But there's one common motif, which is that some idiot, some fool, it could be a hare or some other animal, just got the message from the moon wrong. The moon was trying to explain, look, it seems like your mum's dead, but she's going to wake up. And this boy said, no, I don't believe a word of it. I don't believe she's dead, she's dead. And the moon gets so cross because he won't believe. The moon hits this hare on the mouth and causes the lip to split. And as a result of that terrible misunderstanding, death was made permanent. And then we moved into second creation. Second creation is where we all are now. We die, we go to the other world, we meet the divinity, and that's it, you're stuck, you can't get back again. There's no to and fro road between this world and the other world. But the road into first creation is through menstruation. You go with the girl, and you go with the girl by bleeding in solidarity with her. Everyone gets cut, and as they get cut, they go into a kind of trance, and you're back in first creation. So first creation is not, for them, it's not like anthropologists think of it, like long ago. You bring the origins of everything into the present through your rituals. That was a rather long-winded digression on menstrual taboos.
Somebody's got a question,
Just to ask very quickly.
Yeah.
That cutting yourself in solidarity with the women thing, is that the same as why they pierce noses in Papua New Guinea?
Yes and no. My whole book's on that subject. But I've only read half of it. The second half is to explain what happened when, really briefly, when we became symbolically human in the human revolution, we were such good hunters, so collaborative in hunting. We had such an abundance of game animals, especially large game animals like elephants, giraffe, mammoths, that we could relax. We could slow down hunting. We didn't have to hunt anything that moved, or we didn't have to go hand to mouth. We could slow down and get a really relaxed rhythm going. So you only needed to hunt when the moon was giving you the light enough to be able to stay out night after night and succeed in the hunt. Once you got your mammoth, I'm talking about Ice Age Europe, once you got out of Africa, but there are plenty of huge animals in Africa, once you've got your large animal, you don't have to, you're made for the next month. That meat will last maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks. After that, you may need some other stuff, but you don't need to organise this massive celebratory, ceremonial hunt, except once a month. But then what happened was the extinction of the megafauna, climate change, the end of the Ice Age, big animals being hunted to extinction, unfortunately, in many parts of the world, not Africa, but everywhere else pretty much. And then people had to start sort of chasing anything that moved. And when that happened, if a woman sort of said, "Oh, you can't hunt that because I'm in the wrong phase of my cycle, the moon's wrong," men would have to say, "Well, sorry, but you've got to feed, we've got to eat." And so the moon was overridden. And when the moon was overridden, women's menstrual cycle was overridden. The solidarity that women had previously to motivate men to hunt once a month broke up. And then what had to happen, I'm skipping right ahead, I shouldn't be talking about this now really. But in a way, two choices. Either the whole society collapses, because women can't synchronise with the moon, and I think probably society would have collapsed, or men step in and say, "Okay, women can't do it, we'll do it for you." So then women are then more isolated, less empowered, and men, as you pointed out, in Papua New Guinea, bleed from the nose very powerfully. In parts of Australia, they bleed from the penis, they cut the penis. Men are saying, they do sub-incision, that's right. So men are saying, and they know much better than the anthropologists what's going on. The men in Australia say to the anthropologists, "We are doing what women used to do. These are women's secrets. We've stolen them from women. We had to steal them, but still, we stole them. And now, when women start to bleed in synchrony, we don't really like it because it's a bit of a threat to us, and we sort of break all that up." And so you're right, that is what happened. But I'm not talking, that's what we call the counter-revolution. Okay, we're now trying to talk about the revolution, which was the time when women gained the power to make things work using the bodies that they've got and evolve. Egalitarianism. So it's not quite true that all hunters and gatherers are egalitarian completely. In some cases, like many parts of Australia, overall is what we've been describing. Men have a monopoly partial monopoly of ritual power, some that's quite strong monopoly. But wherever you have, as Jerome
says following James Wood, when we have immediate return hunter-gatherers, which means no storage. It's egalitarian, and pretty much all African hunter-gatherers are immediate return hunter-gatherers, and they're assertively egalitarian.
Sorry, just Chris, just as I was saying earlier, another condition is that they have to be highly mobile. I think that's part of it.
That's absolutely right. It's when you settle down.
Yeah.
You see, if you're mobile, you don't want all that property. You don't want to lug your furniture around. You've made a huge fireplace in one area, you can't move it. So if you're mobile, automatically you're not going to have property. You're going to have as little as you can get away with.
The mobility also means you can always just up and leave if you're fed up.
That's the point Jerome makes. You have some difficulty with somebody,
with your feet.
and instead of having to put up with this difficulty or whatever, you vote with your feet and off you go. There's plenty of space for everybody, and so again, the kind of tensions that you get when people are crowded together with a fence around them. Gender solidarity. Now, the egalitarianism is actually, as we know, upheld by gender solidarity. So the fact that women have enormous amount of solidarity means they're just not going to put up with badly behaved males. Men start throwing their weight around. One man starts to maybe get a woman pregnant and then look for another wife. I mean, the women are so demanding that it's very difficult for a man to have more than one sexual partner at any one time. Maybe he'll get away with two, but he's got to be really clever and hard-working. Nobody really objects to it. If he's that, I think the view with the Hadza and other hunter-gatherers is if you can keep two women happy, good luck to you, kind of thing. But it's really difficult because the women are very, very demanding of meat, of provisioning, and childcare, of attention, of time, and and of course, as soon as the man does misbehave a bit, as Jerome's been saying, the women will take action, and they start with laughter, which is the levelling device. But there's so many ways in which the fact that women have got that solidarity means that there's a strong element of gender solidarity in all these societies. And in the African hunter-gatherers, my teacher at UCL, Alan Barnard, who worked with the Naro, he said basically the women, if they've got an edge of dominance, if any sex is dominant, it's the women. Meat distribution rules. So these people are coming back with a games book. I don't have to say, do I, what an enormous revolution has happened since the time when we hunter-gatherers, ancestors of humans, we were all once hunter-gatherers, but when our ancestors were chimpanzees, this wouldn't happen. When a chimpanzee, and they do, when a chimpanzee gets hold of a colobus monkey, what happens is the chimpanzees fight for it, they pull it apart while it's still alive, eat bits and some they can't. No chimpanzee can monopolise all the bits. A little bit of it gets kind of shared. It's not really shared. It's just that everyone else is taking it a bit of it. But the females don't get any hardly. It's certainly not a nursing female, because she's got to fight against the males who are monopolising as much as they can, and the female chimpanzees will, for their protein, for the animal protein, they'll look for termites. With all hunter-gatherers, that's completely reversed, and they have what I call the own kill rule, which means the animals you kill, you don't eat. So these men are bringing back that games box to the camp. It can't be eaten until the women have taken hold of it. It'll then be cooked. If you like, cooking it means it removes the blood from it, removes the taboo, and then that in itself means that the women get a share. I mean, obviously, different hunter-gatherers have different permutations and combinations of those features. But the meat distribution rules are not separate from the gender solidarity. The women's powerful solidarity makes sure that the meat gets properly distributed. And it all arrives back at camp where the women are with the kids and the. Obviously the women move around. They do a huge amount of moving around looking for tubers and stuff. But they don't travel quite as far as the men have to when they're going hunting. Rituals tied to lunar phase. So I'm sure you've heard about this before, but the people that Camilla's studied most closely, the Hadza, they have the epime ritual, which can only happen, and that's the main ritual for the Hadza. If the Hadza lose epime, if they don't practice epime, they feel that their identity would collapse. They wouldn't be Hadza. They have to perform epime. Epime can only be performed on the nights when there's no visible moon. As soon as the moon rises, you can't be performing epime. It has to be down behind the whatever, however high or low the horizon is, the moon has to be down below it before they can perform epime. So essentially epime happens only once a month during those 3 or 4 nights of dark moon. But ritual starting lunar phase, again, is general. So the trance dances, in many parts of southern Africa, they may be held at full moon. Other rituals may be held at dark moon. But the idea that you can just have a ritual without worrying about the time that's not how things work. You can't organise a future event without correlating, without kind of triangulating between the sun and the moon. And those two will give you a point. And humans have always done that. And menstruation rituals in particular are tied to the lunar phase. So this is the picture on the front cover of my book. This is a soul girl who's just coming out of her seclusion. She's got on her face painted the image of a gemsbok. So that's on her face. It's the same animal, as it so happens. But she comes out when the moon is new. So the first sight of new moon, in other words, the reborn moon, she is now reborn, resurrected, coming out of her seclusion. Menstruation linked with the moon. That all hunter-gatherers have that view. But then when you think about it, so do we. We have cosmologically the idea that menstruation has something to do with the moon. Going to talk about that, whether that's true or not. Is it true that women are synchronized with the moon? Clearly in our culture not. Actually in most cultures it's difficult to find a direct, real physiological connection. But all of those features we've been looking at are telling us that we need to look at both sexes. You can't just have a man the hunter model. The men are only hunting in the way they're hunting because the women are insisting on it. Okay? We wouldn't let the men just go away and eat stuff out there. And what the women do, essentially, is the women make it very clear. Yes, we like sex, but you're not having any until you've made yourself useful. So when the men are hanging around looking for sex, but the women aren't too happy, the babies are crying to be no meat in camp for a week at least, the women will just say, call yourself men, you haven't hunted anything for weeks, the babies are crying, go away, leave us alone, go and look for a gemsbok or a zebra, and come back, and then we'll think about it. So you can't even explain the bits which the man the hunter thesis is preoccupied with, man the hunter, man the tool, all that, so even that doesn't make sense without looking at what women are doing. In many ways I would argue, and Jerome would support this, that women are kind of managing the hunt. Women are almost like the management, in the sense that they initiate the hunt, they motivate it, and they make the men do the actual work, but when the men have done the job, the women then take the proceeds and do the distributing themselves. So it's more, all this menstrual ritual stuff is a kind of management job. In a very playful way, it's not top-down management, it's a bottom-up management, but that's the better way of looking at it, than to think poor women are not allowed to go hunting. And that is horrendously Western conception, way of looking at things. Like, woman's place is the home. The home with hunter-gatherers is where everything happens. It's the big meeting place where all the stories are told, all the relationships are formed. Home is the sort of the power centre of the community. It's not a bad place to be. Nothing like a Western concept of woman's place being in the home. This is just to say, this isn't a particular, marginal theory. It's just basic Darwinism, that females drive social evolution with all primates, not just primates, by the way, with mammals generally. And it's for the reason I was explaining, because the egg is a different thing from the sperm. The eggs are big, and the sperm are small. What it means is that females are going to be responding, we'll talk about animals, get to humans in a moment, females are going to be responding to environmental variables which alter the way the food is distributed. The females will respond first. So supposing the food is clumped, that will enable the females to clump together instead of scattering while foraging. If the females are clumped, logically it might be possible for the males to have access to multiple females. Whether they do or not, of course, depends on all kinds of other things. But the crucial thing is that the males map themselves onto the environment, structured by where the resources are. The females do that. The males secondarily map themselves onto where the females are. So the females are thinking, how do we feed our babies? And the males are thinking, how do we find females? And so can you see that the females are doing the sort of facts on the ground are set by the females, and the males have to adjust to that, which is why we really have to look at the female strategies if we're interested in any of the changes which happen among primates. If you want to say why has this group got a one male system, this is a multi-male system, all these things, look at the females first, and then you explain what the males are up to. So this is, you may have seen this before.
Can I ask something?
Yes?
Is patriarchy almost like a backlash to when the men got absolutely fed up with being pushed around by the women? And they thought, we're not going to have this.
That's what the patriarchal myths. So we have done that here previously. The myths that men tell about a primitive matriarchy. The men say we got fed up with these women pushing us around, and so we overthrew them, and now thank goodness we got them in their place. And that's what the men say. I'm at the moment, Greg, I'm not doing myths. I'm doing science. Yeah, sure. Right. When I get to this point, I sometimes feel I should be asking Camilla to say all this, but do you want to say that this bit? You probably do better than I would. Right. Brains are costly things to have.
What are you doing?
No, go on. I'm just
Give me a break, Camilla.
Give me a break. Yeah. Let's explain that diagram.
This is the story of human evolution in a graph. Not everybody likes graphs, but there's an awful lot of information that tells you some of the critical points of time and features of human evolution. We think we're so special because our brains are so big. Our brains are incredibly big compared to our closest primate relatives. We've ended up here, there were Neanderthals up here as well, so their brains are big too. But we've ended up here with more than 3 times the size of a chimpanzee's brain. So chimpanzee brains are roughly similar to...
I'm just trying to get the Neanderthal.
Roughly similar to, a little bit less than Australopithecines. So basically your Australopithecines, about 3 million years ago, pretty much bipedal chimps, pretty much. And presumably they're operating similar kind of ecology, similar kind of dietary requirements. Presumably female Australopithecines pretty much looking after their babies just the same as chimps do by themselves, pretty much. But when it comes to here, about 2 million years ago, and we get genus Homo, we're not exactly sure. This is an old chart which has got Homo gaster there. Call it African Homo erectus or Homo gaster. Very origin genus Homo. We've got twice as big a brain as chimpanzee.
Is it clear to everyone that the left-hand thing is cranial capacity?
Yeah, sorry, that's the brain size.
And the bottom one is time.
A volume, so if you pour some sort of fluid into the actual cranium. So these are actual fossil specimens.
Sorry, where's Homo sapien? Us.
We're here. We're this, sorry. It's not very well labelled. Heidelbergensis, this one, which is the ancestor of us and Neanderthals. These are us and Neanderthals up here. There's a mixture in there because the Neanderthal brain size is also very large. So that's a big jump, twice as big. That's a big jump again in this period, 3 times as big. And so something has happened now. Brains are hugely expensive. They're so-called expensive tissue. And it is fundamentally the mother that has to find the nourishment to raise offspring that are going to have that very large brain, because most of the brain growth is happening in the course of lactation, in fact. So something has happened to enable females to get that extra energy already there, but even more so, it's happened again here. So some of the good hypotheses about what that might be, well, the big arguments these days are on what's called cooperative breeding, which is one of the versions perhaps of the grandmother hypothesis. The females are no longer alone doing all the work of getting the baby. They're possibly getting a certain amount of help from males, but the person who would be the most reliable to start with would be to get their mother or a close female relative. And that already is signifying a huge change from what we know about with chimpanzees. The reason Sarah Hurdy argues cooperative breeding, what's special about us, we are a great ape with all the great ape cognitive capacities which took to babysitting. We started looking after each other's babies. We didn't just leave each other by themselves with a baby. And that's only possible if we had female relatives close by. So the grandmother hypothesis, cooperative breeding, must kick in here. And other great apes have not been able to break through what's called a grey ceiling. They just can't get through that to that level of brain size because they're fundamentally, the mothers are doing the job all by themselves. What happened here will be to do with cooking. Fire probably becomes a serious element in this last million years, and to do with the reliability of male hunting. So whatever female strategies are operating to get the males hunting, it's kicking in from the time of Homo heidelbergensis and going on upwards and finalising. So in the last 200,000 years we become, this is modern brain. Actually our brains these days are only about this big. They got bigger and then they shrunk again. Nobody's quite sure why. Chris Stringer has a few ideas. Maybe because our bodies have got a bit smaller compared to some of those big old
more efficient,
African.
I think he said.
Possibly efficiency, but still, you've got to find the energy. The females have got to find the energy. Whatever you say about Neanderthal brains might not be as well organised as our brains. Some people try to make that sort of accusation against Neanderthals. I'm not sure I agree with them. But you still got to find the energy. Whatever.
Sorry, where's language on that chart?
Where's language on that chart? Right, that's another story. We could have a few guesses about language on that chart. Chris can come back. We can come back to that question.
Well, it's just. I mean, we were doing that last week. Language depends on trust, and you're not going to get enough trust for language to work without a huge amount of solidarity, kind of rule of law, kind of. If males are rampaging around and everyone's competing with each other, and anything remotely like language is going to get off the ground. So we would say language, starting around here.
There are a couple of things to say about this great big increase. In the social brain hypothesis of Robin Dunbar, increasing brain size, which is basically neocortex size, goes with increasing group size. And it goes with selection for what he calls Machiavellian intelligence. So we were thinking about language. Well, we are also getting supremely Machiavellian intelligence. So if we're dealing with language, that implies we're getting better and better at tricking and lying as well, or whatever it is. And somehow the lid is come off the energy. Where is all that energy coming from? We've got to explain that.
And again, that's the result of self-regime theory in many ways, because before self-regime theory, people just thought in terms of benefits. Oh, a big brain would be good, walking on two legs would be good, and all that stuff. Self-regime theory brought a kind of economics into evolutionary science, in the sense that every adaptation which has benefits has also got costs. And it's only when we realise that brains, although they're brilliant to have, they're hugely costly, that we then began to work this out and to work out. So before people just said, oh, brains are getting bigger, that's good. But now we're thinking, what was stopping brains getting bigger earlier? And we're saying the fact that the mother was all on her own. Because a large brain baby is hugely costly, it needs more high quality food, you've got to carry it around for longer, it's slow to develop, it's all kind of special nurturing, and if you're left alone with it, it'd be better to have a smaller brain baby, it's more likely to survive, and so are you. So somehow the lid gets taken off, the constraint gets taken off, because increasingly the females are finding ways of sharing that burden of childcare, until eventually they do this incredible thing, actually tap into the provisioning energies of what had previously been the leisured sex, the males of the species. And as soon as you think about gorillas and chimpanzees, you realise that the males, they get the genes of the future by getting someone else to do it. They get somebody else pregnant, and then that female has to do all the work, and they don't even bring the odd banana. The males are pretty much useless, except for defence, which of course is only against other males. But I'm not saying that about humans. We're wonderful creatures, us males, and we do all kinds of but you have to explain how we got to be so lovely and cuddly. And this is so now this is the great theory.
Question.
This is a question for you, actually. Well, either of you, really.
No.
See how our brains are, forgive me, I can't think of a better word, corrugated?
Mm-hmm.
Like these ridges.
Yeah,
Where does that appear on that graph?
I
does
think
that start?
That's go. We're
as
supposed
in,
to
are
have
our
many
brains
more
at their current
folds, many more.
size, and then we start
Because of
developing
the
folds?
size
Or is
kind
that
of
already-
cramming into that skull,
Yeah.
then it kind of all gets folded over and folded over, so the
That's-
surface is
That's
kind of
how I figured.
maximised.
So
and
does that
connected.
happen once the brain is already at Neanderthal?
We've got some
size, does that folding start earlier?
endocasts with early Homo, and actually there is with Africanus, so they're about 2 million years old, with indication of quite a bit of
So that starts very
structure.
early. That
It
folding.
is starting fairly early, yeah.
I'm
But probably
wondering
not to the
what to
extent.
do with the time.
Yeah.
I've been far too slow with all this, but I think we need to get on.
Yeah, but to answer Matt's question, there is some evidence of it early on, but it's not as much as late. We do more
That's
so.
what I
than-
just-
yeah.
thank you.
So this is supposed to be the whole story in kind of cartoon form. Okay? So rather simplified, but maybe hopefully it gets the idea across. So these are females because they're clocks, they're periodic. Having an egg means you're going to be periodic because you've got to get the egg ready, and that's that moment. That's called estrus. So we have these clocks, and they're all cycling, and here we have the males. And can you see what's happening? Because the females are out of sync with each other, this one male can get her pregnant, and then he can think, right, okay, maybe in a day or two times I can get her pregnant, and then this one and this. In other words, the fact that the female cycles are staggered enables one or two males, a minority of the males, to monopolise fertile sex with females. And the way I think we should think of that is that it's about time in many different ways. Obviously it's about cyclical time, but also from the male's point of view, just don't think culture, don't think morals, just think brutal, primatology, brutal separate gene theory. The male who is going to be most successful is the one who doesn't waste time on sex, who gets his timing right. So if this male is clever, he can do that. He can save time on sex. And don't forget, going right back again, we're not talking about humans, we're going right back in evolutionary time, the female might as well save time on sex, because once she's pregnant, you don't need to get more pregnant. You're already as pregnant as you can get. You don't need any more male sperm. So from both sides, you're saving time by pinpointing the time-saving information, and that's a relatively precise estrous signal. In the case of many baboons, the genitals will swell up a bit, and the female will act like she really wants sex, and all that stuff's telling the male, right, now's the time to move. Save time on sex. Now the point is now that these females are kind of wasting the rest of them. These females don't need any more than just one male. One male will get you completely pregnant, and also you might as well get pregnant from the male who's best at it, because then whatever genes he's got that make him so good at it may be passed on to your offspring. So you could say these males have been wasted, except who cares? Because they're no use anyway. I mean, you don't need those. These females don't need those males. They're surplus to requirements, you could say. And in primatology, that's largely true. When the females synchronise, you get a different situation. So if all the females give their yes signal at the same time, can you see what's happening? That will just bring all the males into the mating system. So you can see just in itself, synchrony is kind of egalitarianism. It's egalitarian, it'll bring all the males in. And this is what Robin Dunbar says. He says, if you look at all the different primates, some are one male systems, that's like that, that's like that, that's a one male system, and some are multi-male. In some cases you'll get a bunch of females attached to a bunch of males. Where you get that, you'll also find synchrony, up to a point. You'll find a degree of usually seasonal synchrony. If all the females are coming into estrus around the same time, it narrows that window and makes it more possible for all the males to get a look in, and there we'll get a multi-male system. Now, where was he now? Okay, there, that one, right. Okay, now, the problem, of course, is if the females had any need for the males, mostly they don't, because the males aren't doing anything useful except provide sperm. What it means is that the moment the females have gone past that moment, all the males disappear. There's nothing in it for them. They might as well go looking for some other females so they can get pregnant. So now what we need to look at, okay, we've talked about saving time on sex, and that makes a lot of sense.
But can you see that it only makes sense if, from a female point of view, all you want from the male is sperm? Then it does make sense to save time in it. But now just thought experiment, supposing those males could give you something extra. Supposing because they're walking on two legs, and they've got hands, and they're using tools, and maybe getting food and hunting animals, supposing you could make do with more males than just one. It's obvious, isn't it, that if males are providing food, 10 males are 10 times better than one. Whereas if they're providing just sperm, one is just as good, if not better, than 10. Is that fairly clear? Mm-hmm. So as soon as you get food, can you see that all the equations change, and maybe you don't want to save time on sex. Because if you want something more from the male than just once he's got you pregnant, you can help further, maybe you should, quote, waste time on sex. In other words, do what the quote says you shouldn't do, which is enjoy sex for its own sake, because other things are happening while you're having sex other than just getting pregnant. So, if that's the case, you've got a problem when all these males disappear, because you haven't got your help, your provisioning, your time, and your investment. So now what happens is that in order to stop that, females, it takes a long time, but phase out estrus, phase out external signs of ovulation. Because what that means, this dotted line means there is ovulation happening, but the males don't know whether it's the right moment. So what happens then is that, on the one hand, the synchrony means that you've still got this, you're still including all the males, but what the good thing about it is that when the moments pass, the males don't know. And so they're still around. Is that fairly clear? So now, this is.
And then that explains why women, as opposed to other primates, are sexually receptive, even during pregnancy.
One of the great, I don't know, cliches almost, it's so well known by scientists these days, is that they say what continuous sexual availability. It doesn't mean you're having sex all the time. It means potentially you can enjoy sex at any time of the menstrual cycle, and even when you're pregnant, and even when you're nursing. I mean, obviously in real life, you're going to be other issues are going to come up, things, but in principle, continuous sexual receptivity goes with ovulation and concealment. And we humans, half of us, have evolved that continuous sexual receptivity combined with concealment possibly more effectively than any other primate. There are some other primates that kind of do it up to a point, not chimpanzees certainly, not our nearest close relatives, but there are primates. But we've really very effectively concealed ovulation, and there's a reason for it. Because if the moment your ovulation was signalled to the world, it would cause chaos, and your baby wouldn't be looked after because the males would be scrambling all over the place and being a nuisance.
So, Chris,
I want to move on, but yes.
Sexual pleasure and equals bonding equals society. Something like that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Basics.
It's in a nutshell. But we're not bonobos. We're not bonobos. Bonobos, sex, anything that moves, if it moves, have sex with it. It's the bonobo principle. We don't really do that. We have all kinds of rules around sex.
Well, which is the bonding part?
Yes.
It's a game.
Okay. But anyway, right, now, there's a problem with that, which is that you can conceal ovulation, but there's one signal, and now we come to the topic of the whole evening, that's actually quite hard to hide. With chimpanzees, it doesn't matter. Primates menstruate, mostly, but when a chimpanzee female has a bit of blood, the males, they're not interested. Why aren't they interested? Because they've got a far more exciting sexual signal to focus their attention, which is estrus. But if you phase out estrus, can you see what's happening? Let's come to this point. There's no external sign, no cue to fertility left. So you phase out estrus and you leave salient menstruation as the one remaining cue, telling males this interesting, but from the female point of view, possibly dangerous information. Why is menstruation dangerous? And I think perhaps that is a good way of putting it. If it's naked menstruation, just biological menstruation, it's dangerous because it reverses all those previous evolutionary accomplishments of concealment. It gives away information which you don't necessarily want to give away. And this is a kind of way of depicting it. Here we have females who are pregnant, nursing, or just not ovulating, and now one female in the group has come into her first menstrual onset. Just her body is now signalling to the males, right, you can't get them pregnant, but you can get me pregnant if you hang around for a bit. And that's a problem, because these females might not want that. A male's got you pregnant, you want him hanging around, you don't want him looking for somebody else. Again, from a Western point of view, we might find that hard to believe. You say, well, why is menstruation sexy? Why is menstruation interesting? I'm telling you, hunter-gatherers feel it that way. Hunter-gatherers will say menstruation is the best time to have sex if you want to get somebody pregnant. But hunter-gatherers in general, and Jerome will confirm this for the Mengele, will feel of menstruation it's attractive. Because, of course, biologically, it does signal fertility. It's an attractive signal. It doesn't signal immediate fertility, but it does certainly signal imminent fertility, and that's the danger. So what's the solution to that in terms of female solidarity? How do you stop these males all hanging around this one girl and abandoning everybody else? I don't know if Camilla wants to say it in here, but it would probably take too long if we do that. But basically, the females just grab hold of her. The job is for the females to grab hold of her and say, oh no, you don't. Okay? Now we just discussed that. Do you remember I was reading that? The Elan Bull Dance. The Elan Bull Dance is a dance that the girl performs when she's surrounded by other people, and these other people cut themselves. They shed blood as well. But she is secluded from male attention. So women do this as a gender group.
So is this first menstruation, or...?
It's first menstruation, probably second and third.
It's in principle any menstruation where one individual amongst the others,
That's right.
In its first biological manifestation, it's any menstruation.
But also, to a lesser extent, when a woman weans a baby and starts suckling again, she will. But what will tend to happen is she will be part of maybe a younger girl's menstrual ceremony and join up with her in it. But certainly every menstruation is an event. Partly it's an event because it's quite rare with hunter-gatherers. You don't have contraception.
Do not have
and of course,
like
most women are pregnant or nursing. So when somebody's menstruating, it's a big news. It's very exciting, especially for the boys, And we know that from the forest people. And Colin Turnbull describes this beautifully. Another part of the farm, he talks about the Elima. When a girl is blessed by the moon, as they put it, it's a great event. Everyone knows about it. And so the girl goes into this big hut. It's the nearest they get to a temple. It's just a grass hut. It holds 10 or 12 people with her aunts and sisters. They all sing these songs. They all regard themselves as sexy. And then now and again the girls will appear at the door, and all the boys are looking, and the girls will come out and chase the boys. And if they with their saplings, and if they hit a boy, fairly gently, but not that gently, the boys then honour bound to go into that hut and have sex with all the women. Whereupon he's initiated. I don't know whether he manages it. Whether he manages it is another issue. Well, the way Colin Turnbull says, he says he doesn't have to have sex. He leaves it to the imagination, but he says he doesn't actually have to sex, but he will be given a lot of attention if he refuses. That's the way that Colin Turnbull puts it in the Forest People. So anyway, that's a diagram of a bunch of women when another woman menstruates, surrounding her and sort of monopolising access to her, saying to the men, oh no you don't, except on our terms. And one of the things they'll do is, in a way that's actually quite good, that's actually other women cutting. When she's bleeding, the other women are going to kind of jointly bleed, as we saw from that description of the Elan Bull Dance. The men are thinking, what? I'm imagining, they're not really thinking what, but we're going back in evolutionary time to men being, what's going on? The answer is that these women have, they're all painted up. You could argue that that's their wall paint. And they could say, right, why does the cosmetics appear in the archaeological record at the very moment when brain size starts to go exponential? And we're saying, this is Camilla's argument, the cosmetics are kind of an antidote to menstruation. Don't think that the red ochre means menstruation. No, it's like an antidote in the sense it makes menstruation safe. Why is it safe? Because everyone's doing it. It's like they said in that story. Once everyone's bleeding, all together, jointly, we're safe, and we haven't any fear, and we go into first creation. That's a picture of it. And here, and this is what we call the female cosmetic coalition. What we're saying is that this theory can be tested. It's not like so many just so stories. You can test whether it's right or not because it makes very specific predictions which can be tested in the light of the archaeological record. I'll try and get them through fairly quickly. The earliest evidence of symbolic behaviour should be a cosmetics industry focused on blood red pigment. It needs to be blood red, otherwise it wouldn't work, would it? It couldn't be the antidote to menstruation. If it was some other colour, it was grey or yellow or something. The window of emergence should correlate with it. In other words, all we're saying there is that the period during which this explosion of cosmetic use should occur should be when the brain starts sleeping up in size, because it's telling us that something amazing was happening to get the males to provision females and allow the burdens to be shared even more than before, so that the brain size can start shooting up. The earliest collective representations, in other words, we're now saying if we look back in the archaeological record at the earliest rock art or other signs of art, they should consist of wrong plus red. Now, wrong just means wrong time, wrong sex, wrong speak. It means don't have sex with us now. But it should be spelled out in red. Okay, preserved in rock art, myth and hunter-gatherer ethnography. That's kind of... this is a telescope way of putting all those predictions together. And we call that the human revolution. This is Stringer's notion, going back to 1989. And here is the evidence. This is largely the work of RAG supporter and member over many, many years, Ian Watts. Ian Watts has become the world expert on, in many ways, the most important thing in the archaeological record as far as human origins is concerned, on the ochre record. Won't go into much detail, but the ochre sometimes it looks a bit brown, but when you powder it, especially when you mix it with some fat and put it on your face, it comes out a lovely bright blood red. And these are just dates for the findings of this ochre. These are the different. That's one particular cave that Ian's been working at Pinnacle Point, but they go back 300,000 years, 200,000, 150, and so on and so forth. Sometimes with beads. In the later periods around here, you get the ochre plus the beads, and very interestingly, even the beads themselves show that they were worn on bodies that were ochred, because you can find little traces of red ochre on the beads even to this day. And here's
You're wearing some very nice beads on faces.
Yeah, well, those red beads are again similar. By the way, it doesn't have to be ochre. People use all kinds of other fruit juices and berries and things in parts of the world. It's just that the ochre preserves. The ochre lasts, so it's in the archaeological record. The uruku and stuff.
Probably ochre is less sophisticated technologically for processing.
Yeah, okay.
Plant pigments are quite sophisticated.
Right, now these are, I say Ian's discoveries. Ian was part of the team, the ochre specialist of the team which discovered all this stuff, okay? But I just wanted to emphasise, we're the people, the team, that said, right, the ochre was used for body paint. So the world's first art wasn't on walls. Why would you put a picture of an antelope on a wall when it's flat and it doesn't move? Why not have a singing, dancing, 3D, antelope on your body, act it out, and paint your body appropriately with whatever stripes and colours you need? But here we don't have the art, because of course it was on the body, and the body doesn't last. But we have the crayons used to produce the art. And you can see what I mean by crayons. Look at the sharp point on that. You can imagine these are almost like lipsticks. Modern lipsticks with a beveled edge. A beveled edge clearly designed to produce a sharp, clean outline of colour on some surface. And the insane, the body. And in some cases, we know that there were abstract designs, because there are designs, maybe the same designs, similar designs, cross-hatchings on some of these pieces of ochre. And this is the piece that they've got in this month's National Geographic, this famous Blombos piece that made the headlines 7 or 8 years ago, maybe 10 years ago. 2002, sorry, got the date wrong. Right. And these are more interesting cross-hatchings. So, and then this is the other thing. I mean, Ian's a real scientist. We need to stop. Okay, right, we'll stop in 5 minutes. 5 minutes? How to do 5 minutes?
5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay.
2.
So what Ian's done here is he's compared the different pieces of ochre, and he's asked like which pieces seem to be most valued, which were the most carefully preserved, ground. Because you've got different types of ochre, different colours, some of it really blood red, some of it less interesting, less, And this, by the way, this black doesn't mean black, it means saturated very red. So what he's saying is that this is just showing you that the more the pieces of ochre were valued, carried over long distances, carefully treated, modified, used, the more likely that ochre is absolute blood brilliant red. Showing that the people themselves were interested in the colour. And we have to say that because other people, skeptics, initially, I won't go into all the different people, there's lots of other skeptics even today who say, oh no, ochre was just used as an insecticide or to stop getting sunburnt or something to glue your...
These days, hafting.
Hafting. So why would you need to be blood red in order to haft your spear point onto the shaft? So the fact that they were looking for the red, which is exactly what we would predict. Now this is a Himba girl. This is one of the groups in Africa that still use, well, not quite a few did use ochre, but they've become well known for almost like the ochre people. And the grinding of the ochre today by the Himba is overwhelmingly a woman's job. And rather like in the National Geographic, this picture here, you've got another picture here which we've got. The point here is that it's not quite like, we might think of cosmetics as a bit of frippery, a bit of competitive, women on their own doing their cosmetics. Not at all. Here these women are helping each other look great and putting on each other's makeup, if you like. All brilliant red, cover the whole body, including the hair, and they're wearing a shell, suggesting how those shells in the archaeological record got the ochre on them. This is another naughty picture, but this is a Himba. Just before a wedding, and the build up to a wedding, all the women get together and they dance, move as if they were cows with their hooves. And it's always, you remember when I was reading it out, these aren't hunter-gatherers, these are pastoralists, but they've obviously inherited a huge amount of those older traditions. The first people, when in first creation, no one wore clothes. The women use their sexiness, their bodies, to be almost like tauntingly sexy to the men, celebrating that. And you can see, I think the picture makes again the point. The women they've got their war paint collectively. You wouldn't be able to tell. See, what women need to do, it's obvious really when you think about it, what women need above all to do is to stop men from picking and choosing between females on the basis of their biology. No woman who's got pregnant wants the males to then, say, oh, I found somebody else whose body signals are giving me a come on. This is women's collective war paint preventing it from happening. Just really, really quickly, we even think that we've got here the world's first metaphor. Everything that makes us human in terms of conceptual thought and language and grammar and all those things is the use of metaphor. A metaphor is a false statement, it's a fake, it's wrong, but it's productive. It's wrong in a way that people can feel good about. So makeup is fake, isn't it, in a way? But this, but you can see why modifying your original bodily surface is it's not just a good thing, it's what makes us human. We actually create our own representations, we are in control of our own sexuality. And to get to the things we were talking about earlier, to get to Aquila and Num and all those other concepts I was saying earlier on, which are so important, what those concepts do, they signal that your blood is the blood of the game animals. Meaning that if the men are going to be respectful of your blood, they've got to be respectful of the blood of the game animals, because that's, in some profound sense, the same. The blood flows through humans and animals. By the way, that's the basic idea of totemism. Totemism is the idea of sharing blood with animals, which means your ancestors must be, in some sense, the animals you hunt. But it's very simple to see how it gets there. It's just wrong. All the females need to do is say, it's not the time for sex now. What's the most powerful, almost primordial way in body language you can tell a male it's inappropriate to have sex just now? You just reverse all the sexy signals. A male in biology might be looking for a partner who's spot on female, spot on human, not some kind of animal, and in a fertile moment. If you want to reverse all that and signal inviolability, especially collectively, you just say wrong on every count. We're bleeding together. And we're not even females, by the way, we're all males. And we're not even human, we're all an animal. So the eland bull dance, okay, can you see how it comes? This girl is actually a Gemsbok in this particular picture.
Still the eland.
But they will call it eland, will they? Yeah, okay, thanks to her. But can you see what's happening? It's a metaphor. It's like the women have got every reason to say we're an animal, and we're a male animal, and we're all bleeding anyway. The biological human male, like any other male, is the signal no isn't what you're desperately anxious to hear. The male is wants to hear yes, and kind of all kinds of Darwinian reason for that. And what it means is that the male, it's not just whispering, oh, by the way, we don't want sex just now, and just say it once. You've got to put on a big song and dance. No, no, no. In body language, which can't be mistaken. No, no, on every, and that gives you, we're animals. But if you're say an eland, which is that animal that men hunt, and while you're signaling we're an eland, or I'm an eland, if you're doing that while bleeding, that in itself constructs the blood of the animal as the same.
So the Keeney's ethnography, all the way through to the 21st century, the jeune trois healers are telling the Keeneys, the girl first is in menstruation, she's transforming herself into an eland, into an old woman, into a hunter.
Yeah.
The danger of if the other people don't bleed, then she will become a hunter and hunt the man.
Yeah, that's right.
If he's not bleeding.
That's right.
So he has to go into first creation the same as to be able to transform.
And this is just, I don't know, I had that for my Polish talk, we don't really need that, but it's just that...
Let's finish now.
Yes, okay, that's the end of it, okay.